It was St. Patrick's Day of 2011, and I had just gone out for a beer and wings at a local pub with some friends. I didn't feel like staying out too late because I had class early in the morning the following day. I had maybe 2 or 3 bottles of beer over the course of the night, and I was mildly buzzed, but nowhere near drunk. Because everyone else had planned to stay out much later than me, I walked home alone around midnight, which wasn't a big deal because I only lived about 5 minutes away. At the time, I was living in a small basement apartment in a quiet residential neighborhood. I went into my bedroom, which had a small window near the ceiling that faced out into the backyard. Outside of the window, the ground was dug out and there were some large items belonging to the backyard pool, which was out of service for the winter, stacked around the brick wall. I turned on the light in my room and started to get changed. I was completely naked and facing toward the window, and I glanced up and saw what I thought to be the reflection of my own face in the window. I glanced away, thinking nothing of it at first, but then I felt like something really wasn't right. I looked up again and took a closer look at the face in the window. My eyes widened and I tried to awaken slightly from the alcohol buzz. I looked closer and realized that the face was moving around in a way that did not mirror my own movements. Also, the face was smiling and speaking. I realized there was a young man who must have literally trespassed into the backyard, maneuvered himself behind all of the pool supplies, and crouched down in the dugout area outside of the window. I freaked the heck out and promptly grabbed a blanket to cover myself, and then ran into the living room. I was home alone, so I called one of my roommates, who attempted to convince me that I had to have been imagining things because I was drunk. I'm not sure what was worse, seeing what I saw or not being believed about it. And the other crappy part is that the next day when I told my classmates, they laughed at me and we were high-fiving each other and being like, "Bro, that's hilarious." It wasn't. It was scary and awful. A little bit of background. I, a 23-year-old female, was 20 at the time, and I had moved into my uncle in San Antonio, with the agreement that I didn't have to pay rent, as long as I helped him out with chores and with my cousins. I got a job at a super-known coffee chain downtown, close to the touristy part of the area. We had a lot of regulars and a lot of homeless coming in and out. I felt relatively safe though because I got to know the people there, and it was almost always a lot of foot traffic. I used to even take walks after work in the area, especially since I was super close to the Riverwalk. Skip to a couple months into the job and I was friends with everybody that I worked with. We were all super close. On this particular day, it was one of my coworkers' last day. There were about 3 guys who had been in there almost all morning. They hadn't bought anything and we were just hanging out, which was not unusual for my location. On my break, I decided to walk down to a nearby drugstore so that I could get a farewell card and maybe a small gift for my coworker. I walked out and put my earphones in, and before I could press play, I heard the door open behind me and footsteps following behind. Whoever it was, it caught up to me and started walking beside me, matching my pace exactly. I turned to look and it was one of the guys that had been in there all morning. He was a bit taller than me and he reminded me a lot of Lakeith Stanfield. He tried to ask for my number and I kindly told him no. He persisted and I, with a short temper, told him to screw off. He stopped and stared at me in surprise, as I don't look like somebody who speaks up or it would be rude. He stood there as I walked away, and by the time that I went back, they were gone. I proceeded to tell my coworkers about the encounter and we all laughed it off. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Every shift after that, he would already be there just hanging out, or he would walk in mid-shift, sometimes with somebody else or sometimes by himself. I assumed he was just another homeless person, because how else was he always able to be around? My shifts were sporadic. Sometimes I opened some days, other days I closed, and sometimes I worked mid, but it didn't matter. He was always there. At that point, I started to feel paranoid. I would always catch him staring in my direction. He never ordered anything, never talked to me, and luckily he wouldn't follow me. He would just sit there watching me. I started mentioning it to my coworkers, and they were noticing it too. One of my team leaders would help me out by sending me to wash dishes in the back, or to go organize the cooler. My coworkers would also try to place themselves and try and block me from his view. I started feeling uncomfortable at work. Sometimes when I closed, a coworker would walk me to my car before heading home themselves. Or if I didn't close, they would walk me to my car and turn around and head back to work. And then one day, he was there again just staring. I was working the register that day, and he walked up and ordered a water. I asked for his name for his order. I now had his first name just in case, and he took his water and he sat down. I had mentioned him to my manager, but at this point, he hadn't really done anything that we could do beside note it in the manager book. The next day, I worked with my manager. It was him, 2 other coworkers, and me. I told them that I had to go to the bathroom really quick. There were 2 bathrooms right next to each other, but sort of hidden from the coffee bar and the register, and they weren't gender specific. I walked around the bar to the lobby area. I had to pass his table and walk down the lobby to get to the bathroom. I noticed him get up before going inside the bathroom. I sat down to do my business when the door rattled. I shouted out that it was occupied, but whoever it was, kept rattling the door until I had finished. When I opened the door, no one was there, and walking back, I noticed him adjusting back into his chair. I was super freaked out, and I told my boss. He couldn't tell him anything because we had no proof that it was him. Later that shift, he got up and picked up a coffee from the pickup area. My boss assumed that he had ordered it and let him take it. I told him that it wasn't and that it wasn't even his name. My boss used this as an opportunity to tell him if he does something like that again, he can't come back. The man apologized and actually stuck to the rules every day after that. He went back to just watching me. Cut to Valentine's Day. One of my team leaders and I would be scheduled to work certain Thursdays after close to deep clean the store, and we would stay until about 1 in the morning. This happened to be one of those Thursdays. We were almost done, and I had to clean the bathrooms as one of the last chores. I finished, and as I walked out of the bathroom, I saw him peeking in with both hands pressed to the window, eyes wide and just staring at me with this super intense look. I froze for a second, just staring back. I noticed on one of his palms that is pressed to the window, there is a purple foam heart. He doesn't move at all. I freak out and I go back into the bathroom. I shout, Hannah, he's here, he's back." She barely hears me through the music that we were blasting. Hannah was the team lead who would help hide me from him, so she knew the huge fear that I had towards him. She walked towards the bathroom shouting back, "What are you saying? What's going on?" As soon as she gets close, she sees him. I told her again, "He's here, he's watching me." She started shouting through the window, "You need to leave. If you don't leave, we're calling the cops." I step out a little to see if he'll leave, and he's ignoring her, and his eyes were fixated in my direction. I step back into the bathroom, and my lead continues to shout at him to leave and threatens him with the police. About 5 minutes pass, and he realizes that I'm not stepping out until he leaves, so he does. The next day, my lead and I told my manager that I wanted to file a police report. He tells me no and to wait until he talks to his boss. He shows up again that day, but I was only there to talk to my manager and leave right after. When I got home, a friend convinced me to just call the police. So I text my boss that I don't care what he or his boss says, and that I'm scared and that I'm gonna file a report. I dial 911 and I tell them a summarized version. and they tell me that they're going to send someone to where I live to take the official report. The two officers were very nice and supportive. I told them my whole story and how my boss didn't feel the need to get cops involved since I wasn't harmed. The officers told me that I should have called right away, and they defended me saying that they could get him for harassment. I thank them, and they tell me that if he shows up, to call them again so they can take him in for trespassing and harassing. I think that day my manager banned him and warned him because he never showed up in the coffee shop again. A few months later, when I was comfortable again with downtown, I went out with some friends to walk around. We were close to where I worked, and as we rounded a corner, I saw him, and so I ducked into a little corner store and my friends followed. I told them that I saw him and they kept an eye out. Once he was out of view, we left the store, and that was the last time that I saw him. It's Friday night, and I had just gotten out of school and I had to go straight to work. I get to work and work for about 4 hours. It was a half shift tonight. And my boss, who's also my aunt, tells me that we need more spoons for tomorrow's event. We sell ice cream and these events have like 5,000 plus people at them. I say okay on that, I'll go and grab them on my way home. The only store open with heavy-duty spoons is all the way on the other side of town, and I still wanted to go meet up with some friends and mess around. I decided to take the faster but more sketchy way around the outskirts of town. I live in a weather bipolar state. It snowed last night, but I figured the roads would be fine enough even if they weren't plowed. I take off to the store and the first 5 minutes go by and nothing's wrong. I haven't seen a single car or any buildings the entire time. But keep in mind it's approaching 9 p.m. and I'm on the outskirts of town. And no one really takes this way in case they really have to. All of a sudden I see something out of the corner of my eye, and it looks like a man. Roughly 5'8", I would say, wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and a backwards hat. He's in the ditch and walking in the snow when it's about 10 degrees outside. My first thought is to pull over, but I'm on my phone with my mom at the time and she warns me to not, as some things have happened before in this town. For example, a couple years ago, a college girl was kidnapped and found dead, rolled up in a rug in 2014. I consider stopping, but for some reason I tell myself not to. I wasn't really worried about anything. I'm a young dude driving a big pickup truck. The last type of person anybody would want to harm, right? I passed the man, going about 40 miles per hour. Like I said, the roads aren't the best. I drive not even 500 feet past him, and immediately, a car that I did not see at all before turns on and pulls out of a field entrance off the road and starts to follow me. At first, I thought it was focused on the man in the ditch and I didn't see a road, and that's where they came from. But I later found out that there was not a road there. Now again, I'm not super worried. I watched my fair share of crime movies and read plenty of stories in the sub, and I didn't feel like it was a threat yet. I started to approach the town again and had to take some turns to get where I'm going. I turn left, the car turns left. I turn right, the car turns right. I go around a roundabout and skip my turn and go twice, as no one else was there, and the car follows. At this point, I start to worry a little bit, but maybe they just need to go to the store as well. I then pull up to a stop sign. I wasn't on the best side of town either, may I add, and I turn without my turn signal on. The car still follows. Now at this point, I should have went straight to the police station, but I still didn't think much of it. I'm only about 2 miles from the store where plenty of people will be. I take a few more turns and the car continues to follow me. I completely blew a stop sign at a non-busy intersection, and the car does a quick stop and go and catches up. At this point, I'm 2 turns to the store, so I'm not still worried. I turn into the store and the car turns also. The store also has a gas station, so I pulled there first to act like I was getting gas. The car sits off to the side of the road, in between the gas station and the store and just sits there. I wait about 10 minutes and the car doesn't move. At this point, I start to get worried. I'm a young kid alone at night near the bad side of town. I call my friends I'm supposed to meet up with later on and give them the license plate for worst case scenario, and then I take off to the store. I cross the street and the car comes straight behind me. I'm freaking out on the phone, not knowing if I should call the cops or not. I go and park as close as possible to the store, and the car parks 3 rows behind me and a couple down. It's getting late at this point and the store is closing soon. There's only a couple of others in the lot. I turn my truck back on and go park on the complete opposite side of the lot, get out, and I completely bolt inside of the store. I'm not super overweight, but I'm not skinny either. I'm about 6'1" and 200 pounds. Who would want to do anything with me? I get the spoons and take my time in the store. I go to call my friends to walk back outside, and my phone is dead. I look out of the sliding glass doors and suddenly there's a white van next to my driver's side. It looks like there's no one in it, but the back windows are covered and it's still running. That's a big red flag. I run to customer service and explain everything, but they think that I'm some young kid just messing around. At the time, I didn't see the original car that followed me, but there was no way I was going outside with that van next to my truck. After waiting what seemed like hours, it was probably about 30 minutes, the van pulls forward, and the original car appears from the side of the building. You can see from the in-store Starbucks window they talked, and both drove off. I wait another 10 minutes and dash outside. I speed to my friend's house, and when I get there, I park in his garage. My one buddy asked why there is a big orange mark on my tire, and my heart begins to sink. When I was inside, the follow car must have marked my tire. After inspecting the rest of the truck, we found a small pipe dropped in the bed of my truck surrounded by snow. It was about 2 inches wide and I would say about 18 inches long, wrapped in duct tape, and it was not mine. I was alone with no phone and scared, in a part of town that I'm not familiar with. I try to laugh it off, but now that everyone's asleep, I can't help but think what would have happened if I had walked outside. I've always been sort of ego boosted in the fact that I'm a chubby fat dude that no one would want to mess with. But after tonight, I realized that anyone can be targeted. This happened about 7 years ago. The story starts with me getting home from high school on the bus. I made it home and saw that my mom wasn't there, and since my dad was at work and my brother didn't get out of school until later, I was the only person there. I put my backpack down and went to untie my shoes, and some dude walks out from a hallway. I go into Occam's razor mode and assume that this is some sort of handyman or repair guy, since we had moved in recently and had been getting a lot of work done in the house. Additionally, he is wearing some sort of tool belt and fits the general repairman look. My mom's usually around when we have people working in the house, so I assume that my mom must have left not long ago and would be back shortly. I nonchalantly tell the guy that my mom should be back soon, and he mumbles something like, "Thanks," and leaves out the front door to what I assume is a repair truck. It's at this point that I text my mom asking when she'll be back, and who's the dude in the house. She asked if I was joking, and it's only at this point that I come to realize that I was sitting on the couch chatting with the dude burgling our house. At this point, the guy was long gone, and luckily my mom was only a couple of minutes away at a store just down the road. She gets back and we call the police, and they take a look around, but nothing actually went missing, and nothing ever really came of it. I'm honestly glad it went down the way that it did, since I only knew what happened once it was already done. This guy had put himself between me and the front door, and I'm really not sure what freaked out, fight or flight me would have done. I also can't imagine what the guy was thinking when I basically just let him walk out the door.